Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in internet shitlords, and this is really an unusual type of video for me to do because it's not really about an RPG product exactly, but it is about something to do with Dungeons and Dragons, and it's just when I saw it, I lost my shit. So like I have to say something about this. It's just unbelievable. However, and this is really unusual because you guys know I have no technical skills whatsoever. This is literally a camera pointing at some books physically stood up in front of me there, and you know I don't know how to do anything with this, right? So unlike other channels where they will cut in now to this image of the thing I'm trying to tell you about, I have no idea how to do that, right? So there's going to be a link at the very, very top of the description, and that link will be a link to the image that I want you to look at, okay? And some of you might have guessed already, most of you probably haven't. That image, it's nothing that's going to be problematic for you to download, I promise. Well, it might shock you though, right? That image is the cover of a new and upcoming Dungeons and Dragons novel. This novel is called Ravenloft, Heir of Strahd by Delilah S. Dawson, who is supposedly a New York Times bestselling author, but really it's not hard to be a New York Times bestselling author, you know. So this image is what they've done to Ravenloft now. And it's just incredible. It encapsulates everything wrong with Dungeons and Dragons, even though it's the cover of a novel, not of an RPG product. But, you know, it's the same spirit. They've actually done it. And these maniacs have done it in book form now, too, which is to say, you know, like, a lot of times one of the criticisms you could make of novelizations of games is that they don't reflect what the game is really like. Like, they're much too archetypal, much too heroic, much too, you know, full of impossible abilities that people don't have in the actual game, stuff like that, right? And those are potentially legitimate criticisms from the point of view of the nerd wanting it to be more like his game. But there's a reason why you don't make it too much like the game, because the game is full of nonsense, right? And RPGs are not novels, and novels are not RPGs, right? But they apparently here they're really going for it, because this is a 2024 party of characters that are there to, you know, to do 2024 stuff in a setting that isn't supposed to have been made for that. Okay, and it's just outrageous. So I hope by now you have clicked on that link, you've seen what this cover looks like, and you can guess what a lot of my ranting for the rest of this video is going to be like. If you haven't, well, you can link it to it later and see it then, or look up if you've got if you've got a laptop handy, so Ravenloft, Heir of Strahd, and you'll see the cover. So here's the thing, right? Ravenloft is not just some kind of evil dark 1990s setting or something like that. It's like, it's actually the opposite of that. And here's a Meatball. Meatball, I don't know if you know, but Meatball is a lecturing professor in ethics at Bovine University. And she, retired now, right? But she would be the first to point out that actually the Ravenloft is in some unusual ways the most moral setting that D&D ever made, because it's a world of evil, right? But it's not a world where evil is right, you know. And on the contrary, it's a world of evil that requires people to be good in order to defeat that evil, right? Why? Because it is based, of course. I mean, it came out of the Ravenloft module, the original one, which is basically a Dracula story for D&D, right? Strahd is just a Dracula ripoff. Look at that jump. She can still jump pretty well at her age. So it's a Dracula ripoff, and it's of course going to be a Victorian morality tale. That's what the Ravenloft setting is meant to be about, right? It's not one where, oh, you know, it doesn't really matter if you're good or evil, or, you know, oh, it's cool to be an anti-hero or stuff like that. No, it's one where it's Van Helsing versus Dracula, right? It's the person who must cloak himself in good and be the morally righteous person, because if you're not, you're going to be corrupted and you will fail to defeat the great evil, you know. So it's, I think the only other setting that even comes close in D&D to having a similar level of very traditional moralistic messaging would be maybe Dragonlance, and that's because of the Mormonism, right? But you know, Ravenloft has it built in because it's a 19th century setting, right? It really is. It's a setting of the Hammer horror films. It's a setting of Bram Stoker's Dracula, right? And what this picture, and I've got a picture on my phone here, but I don't know if this will show up, if it'll be all blinky or something. So just so you guys get a chance to see it here, that's what, this is the group that in the book, I guess, are supposed to defeat Strahd, right? And it just doesn't work, right? That just does not work in Ravenloft. It's a perfect 5e group, right? It's a 5e, you know, late 5e group, right? Obviously not an early 5e group, not a 5e group when I was around helping to design 5e, right? But it's a group that has like almost no humans. It's got a bunch of freaks, right? They look like they're on their way to a rave or something. And even like objectively, right? Looking at it objectively, it's a terrible design because, like, why are they happy, right? Like, why is that person smiling there? And, you know, what are they doing? Why are they all posing? Like, why are they posing? You know, this cover makes no sense in any context, except the context being we're going to update Ravenloft to 2024, and it's like whatever, it doesn't matter. We already know they did that in the book itself, in the Ravenloft book that came out in 2023, I think it was, or 2024, or yeah, it would have been 2023, I think. They already said that basically dark powers are just cool things you can get. It doesn't really matter, right? It does. There's no downside to having dark powers anymore, right? So that's all right, and nobody's really evil, right? So that's okay. And so mostly Ravenloft was about showing off these worlds where there are like some people that are intolerant, and that's probably like, you know, I said in Twitter that these guys, like, why would they, what are they doing? Or like, well, theoretically they're going after Strahd, but for what? I mean, it's like, they're all demons, right? These people, these things, they're pretty much all demons, right? By the point of view of Victorian morality. If you showed it to a Victorian, he would say, yes, those are villains, right? Those are demons or Cambions or something like that have you know, emerged from the depths of hell, including that bird thing, and they have to be slain, right? Because they're clearly not just malignant, but they're also degenerate by obvious appearance, right? Like, and they're clearly tainted in every aspect, morally tainted, right? So this is like, this can't work in a Victorian morality story, right? So like the only excuse could be, well, okay, Strahd is transphobic or something. Maybe they're going to go kill Strahd because he's transphobic, right? But how does that help anything, right? That doesn't fix the fundamental problem. It shows you that D&D is no longer capable as long as it keeps playing by these new rules they've created, right? The new rules are that every setting has to be Seattle in 2024. Characters, as much as possible, must be the most marginal things possible, right? You just playing an elf at this point. Now, at one point, playing an elf was like the height of declaring that you might just be slightly bisexual or something, right? And now, if you're playing an elf, you're pretty much a white supremacist, right? Like if you're playing just a regular elf, like not a drow even, it's at least drow, you know, like, okay, so they're the ones that were misjudged, right? And you know, they didn't do anything wrong, but they were misjudged by the evil white drow, right? But if you're just playing, the white elves, rather, but if you're just playing like a normal elf, like a wood elf, or God help us, a high elf, you know, you're basically a 1930s German, right? Like you have to be, right? That's today, that's completely unacceptable, right? You have to have characters that in appearance look like hipsters with a variety of sexual dysfunctions, right? And you have to, your character has to act as if he comes, like he spent the summer of 22 in the Chaz, right? In Seattle during BLM, right? They have to behave in this way. They have to act in a way completely anachronistic to the entire context of the fantasy fantasy structure from which RPGs derive, you know. But that's the new rules. It has to be this, right? You can't have a world that is actually still traditionally fantasy, because traditional fantasy is absolutely a product of oppressive Western white culture that is oppressive because it's been so successful and because it's saved so much of mankind and because it's given prosperity to the entire world. And these are all evil things because it makes other people feel bad that they couldn't do it, right? So now the revenge has to be that we have to destroy the entire culture and fall back into a new dark age. That's the goal here, right? But, you know, that means that you can't, you simply cannot make functional adventure as long as that rule remains. Now, they're attempting very clearly in the new Player's Handbook, in the 5th edition Player's Handbook, and in the new DMG, and I'm sure it'll be in the Monster Manual too, though I think actually it probably is problematic for them to even call it a Monster Manual, right? Because monster is a derogatory term, I'm sure, you know. Shouldn't it just be called, you know, different optional player characters and their sexualities handbook or something like that? You know, I don't know. But, you know, these things, they're trying to hardwire them into the new, you know, the 1D&D version of the 2014 rules for 2024. The good news is that, of course, if as soon as anybody just says, no, we're not going to do it this way, then it stops, right? So institutionally, there's going to come a moment because they're going to bankrupt themselves on this stuff, right? Like the more we know now, it's absolute fact, right, that for the last several books before the 3 new handbooks started to be produced, right? Like, so everything from like Candlekeep to the Radiant Citadel and to I don't know, I think maybe Spelljammer was after that one too. All of those did terrible, right? They were doing more or less with a couple of little blips, right? Like there's a slight recovery in Dragonlance, and then it dropped again, and then it dropped really badly for Radiant Citadel, and then I think it blipped up again a little bit for Spelljammer. But that's again because Dragonlance and Spelljammer were known names, right? That's the only thing that kind of caused a slight bump. But in every case, the slide is very clear. The chart is very clear. It's a dropping and an accelerated drop in sales. Apparently, the book sales of the Player's Handbook of the 1D&D edition didn't do too well. So at some point, somebody's going to come along and say, no, you know, and also the zeitgeist is changing now, right? It's very clear now that that the woke people aren't, they have no more power, and they're definitely not in charge anymore, and very soon they're going to be starting to be pushed out actively of many areas, right? This is all changed in part because suddenly now people have decided that you know, they're not going to pretend as though you can't vote for Trump anymore or something like that, yeah. They said, no, yeah, like, everybody can, right? Yeah, like, yeah, so Latinos are voting more, you know, in large numbers, blacks, everybody. So, you know, the whole idea that this is some kind of struggle of, like, heroic Maoists that, you know, that dream of a day when they will be paid to do nothing and get to put you in camps, versus the evil oppressors who created everything good in our society, that structure is going to collapse, right? Like that semantic argument, that narrative, as they would call it, right? And at some point, maybe not with Hasbro, who knows, maybe with someone else, because they might just shut down the whole thing and then farm it out to someone, and that someone will say, well, we actually want to make money, so we're going to make it heroic adventuring again, not like eating competitions, which is another product that has just come out or is about to come out, which is an adventure that is based entirely around an orcish food cooking competition or something like that, right? Like they just can't stop at this, because remember, nobody there anymore is actually a skilled game designer. Hardly anyone there has ever actually played D&D. Like, a lot of the people they hired for Radiant Citadel had never played D&D until they were hired, right? And the people there have no idea what they're doing, and they come out of venues like young adult novels or vegan cookbooks, right? So, of course, these are all, like, either women or people who think they're women, and they are going to be focused on things like cooking and tourism and fashion and your sex life in college being a hot mess, right? And all these things that they've tried to force into D&D as they try to remove any element of morals or heroic fantasy from it. So of course they're going to be having adventures that are obsessed with cooking. It doesn't really matter anyways, because nobody's going to buy them, nobody's going to play them, because who would want that who is a normal gamer? Nobody, right? The people who do should be shunned, right? But you know, that's happening now. But at some point it's going to stop, right? And then it can go right back to the heroic fantasy mold, with a few of us getting to say "I told you so." So details about this Heirs of Strahd. The only thing I can tell you is that it's coming out. I think Penguin is publishing it, because it's not actually being published by WotC, obviously. And all it says here is 5 strangers armed with steel and magic awaken in a mist-shrouded land with no memory of how they arrived. Rotrog, a prideful orcish wizard. By prideful, I'm not sure if they mean that he is proud of being a strong orcish man, or proud of being an orcish wizard who, you know, I'm guessing at the magic school they have varying grades or something. You know, and, or if he's like prideful because he's gay or something. It could be any of the 3, or possibly all of them, right? Shivarion, a sardonic drow barbarian. Drows are barbarians now, apparently, too. I mean, we already know they're no longer evil. In fact, it's if you try to have an evil drow or a group of evil drows, then you will probably be banned from the hobby, right? But now apparently they can also be barbarians for no good reason, right? Like, even though they come from a highly advanced civilization. Okay. Alishai, an embittered tiefling paladin. Tiefling paladins, yeah, that's another great thing, right? Like, I mean, in the newest version of D&D, you can now be a paladin without having to believe in anyone or anything, right? Like, you can be a paladin of yourself, for example, literally a solipsist, or an extreme narcissist, you could say. You could be a paladin of you know, something that you really like. I don't know, football, right? You could be a paladin of football. I believe in football, right? And I'm going to do it. Like, it destroys the entire concept of that word, right? So, and a tiefling paladin, by definition, should not exist, right? How can a tiefling, a creature that is half demonic, whose soul is fundamentally corrupted, be able to become a paladin? You know, it only exists in a setting where the intention is to tell you that evil is good and good is evil, right? Or more correctly, that self-service is good, doing everything completely selfishly is good, and not having any kind of code is good, and having a moral code, that's evil, regardless of which one it is, unless it's one that happens to be fashionable at the moment, in which case it can be excused, right? Then there's Ka, a skittish Kenku cleric, and Fiel, a sunny human artificer. This sounds like a group of people in a Big Brother house, right? It doesn't sound like a group of people who are heroic figures that are going to be capable of killing the Lord of the Vampires, right? This is the failure of the entire concept. And I guess it took an attempted novelization to make such a perfect version of it, right? Because, of course, there are lots of adventures that show the failure, right? Radiant Citadel, for sure. Wild Beyond the Witchlight, for sure. Several of the adventures in Candlekeep. The last Ravenloft book that came out with its garbage setting materials, like the changes that they made. But none of those have the benefit of having this setup of a story setup, right? And that setup, just by itself, we don't have to read the novel, thank God, but just by itself, we know exactly what it's going to be. It's going to be people going around speaking in like, oh my God, so random, and all kinds of speak from like 2024, from like Seattle, you know, and California, and they're going to be, oh my God, it's a vampire, you know. They're going to be going over there and having to do something. They're going to, oh, this vampire, maybe he's not really actually good, you know. Oh, he's transphobic. Oh, okay, let's kill him. You know, and it's just like these people are showing off their fashion and, oh my God, my life's a hot mess, you know, and all this stuff of people, you know, it's going to be like Glee, but with pointy ears or something like that, you know. It's just going to be garbage, right? As everything these people touch is garbage. But, you know, I probably shouldn't have done this video, except I think I wouldn't have if it wasn't that I thought it just so perfectly encapsulates everything that's wrong with Wizards of the Coast handling of Dungeons & Dragons, okay? Even though it's technically not a Wizards of the Coast production, right? But it's connected. It's, you know, it has their blessing, right? So this is what I want to do. It wasn't just to inflict you the pain that I had to feel the moment I saw that image, but yeah, I've done my duty now. So I guess that's everything for today. If you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, share it anywhere you think people will be interested. Check out all my products, which I promise are very different from that. You know, if you want like proper heroic adventuring based on myths, stuff like Arrows of Indra, which is based on the Indian myths. The Old School Companion 1 is full of material to make your setting more medieval, not less medieval. Make it less like Seattle 2024 and make it more like, you know, England in 1450. Star Adventure, tiny product actually, only about 32 pages, only costs $9.99, but it's one of my best sellers. It's a set of short but very functional, very easily adaptable space opera rules for OSR that you can use for just about anything. And check out all my other products, especially, by the way, if you're looking for an alternative to Ravenloft, the Red Room have just come out with a new book called Gothic, which is about Gothic horror. Now, I will note, I haven't read it yet, I haven't looked at it, but I know enough about their work that I'm sure they're going to do a really good job at it. I'm sure it's going to have a lot of homage to like Hammer horror and stuff like that. So be sure to check that out in their store, the Red Room store. And while you're there, check out the Pundit Files, my once every 3 weeks now, because I'm busy working on my other book at the same time. My once every 3 weeks periodical. The latest issue is number 22, which is more martial art techniques, which is a sequel to number 3, which is the Renegade Martial Artist class for Lion and Dragon. You know, for Sword and Caravan, really. And it has a bunch of additional martial arts techniques that you can add to it. But if you're not interested in that, there's 21 other issues, well, 20 other issues, counting number 3, that you can find something that you're going to like, whether it's about jousting or whether it's the start of a setting for Star Adventurer, or whether it's, because there is one, we're starting at a setting there, it's called Sons of Heaven. And or if it's like random encounter tables of all different kinds. There's tons of products in the Pundit Files that you're going to find. Adventures, several very good adventures for either Sword and Caravan or Lion and Dragon or Baptism of Fire in the Pundit Files. Every single issue of the Pundit Files costs only $3.50. So if you can get someone to give you $3.50, you will be able to get an issue of the Pundit Files. All right, but check out all my other books too. If you're looking for some horror that isn't Victorian but set in the modern era, check out The Invisible College, for example. That's on the list. Everything is in the description of my video, so be sure to check that out. And we're going to get back to you guys soon, I guess. Currently smoking Stanwell 2019 Pipe of the Year plus Argento Roots.